BJ takes on TM in PMQs, BLM protests in SW1, JIM brings back MPs to Q, and LBC has a CUMT in the studio. These are the interesting times. Protests have been taking place all over the world against racism following the death of George Floyd, and politicians in the UK urge people to stick to social distancing while protesting. But certainly in London, while it may have started out as a socially distanced event, the strength in feeling clearly translated into strength in numbers. And here the London mayor saying, I think, everything that needs to be said.
It's really important that people who feel strongly about this are able to protest, but we've also got to be aware we're in the midst of a global pandemic, and with the best of intentions wishing to go and protest, you may inadvertently, by being too close to somebody else, either pass the virus on or catch the virus. And how would you feel if you then went home and gave it to an older relation in your home who, ultimately lost his or her life? That's why my advice to anybody who is going to be protesting today, tomorrow or Sunday is to please, if you feel that strongly that you've got to go and protest, I personally am not, please make sure you follow the advice. Keep 2 meters apart, wear a facial covering just in case you can't keep 2 meters apart, wash your hands regularly and thoroughly, and if you can't, carry with you a hand sanitizer. These rules are there to keep you safe and also your loved ones as well.
The death of George Floyd by a policeman kneeling on his neck in broad daylight has brought mainly widespread horror and condemnation, with the exception of Donald Trump, who took the opportunity to promote his favourite topic, Donald Trump. He was upset that whilst he was carrying away in the White House with the lights off, his political opponent, Joe Biden, was getting out amongst the people. Donald Trump did the bravest thing he could think of. He got his armed security services using tear gas and rubber bullets on peaceful protesters so he could clear a space to a local church and have a photo op with a Bible. At least, I believe it's a Bible. Hang on.
It's a Bible.
Yeah. Although, let's be honest, it could be any book. Lying for a living, colouring in for dictators. Well, seeing him holding it means that we now know for definite holy objects don't burn him. So let's cross that one off the list, shall we? Holy objects. Yeah, there we go. And of course he's out in daylight, so that's not going to work anymore. He's actually a fan of steak, so we can get rid of that as well. And I'm afraid, America, 3.5 years you did invite him into your home, so that's gone. All you're left with really is garlic, holy water, and the whole good versus evil thing. All right. Now, that was horrifying from Trump, or indeed bog standard to Trump. But knowing that directly insulting another world leader is diplomatic bad practice, Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau took another route when asked about it. Watch what he doesn't say.
But we do have Donald Trump now calling for military action against protesters. We saw protesters tear gas yesterday to make way for a presidential photo op. I'd like to ask you what you think about that. And if you don't want to comment, what message do you think you're sending?
Boris Johnson was also asked about this at PMQs, and for him it was also about what he didn't say.
But I do hope that next time he speaks to President Trump, he will convey to him the UK's abhorrence about his response to the events.
Right, so to be clear, the question was with reference to Trump's response. Here's Johnson's reply.
And I perfectly understand people's right to protest what took place, though obviously I also believe that protests should take place in a lawful and reasonable way.
Nothing about Trump. No, I mean, even the Daily Express had produced an article on how to be anti-racist. Very good, Daily Express. The article included lots of helpful tips, including microaggressions about what not to say in conversations, such as, some of my best friends are black. Now, just be clear, the thinking isn't that the non-racist thing to say would be none of my friends are black. The whole point is that your friend is your friend, irrespective of race, or indeed any of the other differences that make up the vast spectrum known as human. But of course, it's a bit of a moot point anyway, as no Daily Express reader has any black friends. Andrew Marr had Matt Hancock on the show to ask him about the lack of black representation in government.
Thinking about diversity generally, when you look at this government, when you look at the cabinet, there's a very, very stinging, very interesting piece by Sajid Javid in the Sunday Times this morning about inequality and racism in Britain, but there are still no black faces in the cabinet, are there?
Well, hold on, Andrew. There's...
Yes, hang on, Andrew. I mean, you say no black faces, but last Christmas at a fancy dress party, Michael Gove came as James Brown. It was bloody hilarious. I mean, with the whole, you don't mean that, do you?
A full Kwasi Kwarteng was sitting around the cabinet table.
Exactly. We did have one, and I pronounced his name right. Come on, that's got to be worth something, right? Meanwhile, in Gammon Nigel Farage took to LBC to address what he felt was a problem with Black Lives Matter. Well, thank God. Finally, we got somebody on board with some sort of understanding of the problems faced by those suffering racial inequality. And next up on LBC, Bill Gates on how to survive on universal credit. The show is going out at the same time as this video is being created, so I can't actually include any direct quotes from it. But I think I'll have a bit of an educated guess as to what Mr. Farage's main bone contention is. So Nigel, just to be clear, when the mantra is Black Lives Matter rather than All Lives Matter, the reason for this is because all lives aren't being disproportionately stopped by the police. All lives aren't being told to shut up when asking a perfectly legitimate question. All lives weren't asked to come over and work in the UK, and when they did so, only being paid enough to live in flammable accommodation. And after all that, to have lived here, worked, paid taxes, brought up your family, and done all this with national pride, to be told you don't belong, and shoved on a boat back to a country you haven't lived in something like half a century, and you don't even recognise anymore. That is the reasoning behind the mantra, Black Lives Matter. That's it, they matter. What a staggeringly, depressingly low bar to start with as a standard. But that's why Black Lives Matter rather than All Lives Matter. But I guess it takes an arsehole to pick holes. Now, Boris hasn't been having a lot of joy at PMQs lately, or indeed ever. Here he is, facing the Inquisition. Yeah, I'll work on it, don't worry.
Mr. Speaker, the Telegraph this morning is reporting that the Prime Minister's decided to take direct control of the government's response to the virus. So an obvious question for the Prime Minister, who's been in direct control up till now?
I'm sorry, Sir Keir, but do you really have to ask who's been in charge up till now? I'll give you a few clues. He's a full-time Mr. Brexit, part-time amateur pandemic international global responder, a man with a mission to put the vision in collision. He's unsackable, unsociable, couldn't give a fuckable, deadly Dominic, how come all the bad guys are slapheads, Cummings!
I'm very proud of our record, and if you look at what we have achieved so far, it is very considerable.
Yeah, second highest death rates in the world. Yeah, we're coming for you, America. And things didn't get any easier for Bojo. Even the past women in his life were weighing in.
So can my right honourable friend give me the reassurance that as from the 1st of January 2021, the UK will have access to the quantity and quality of data it currently has through PRUM, passenger name records, ECRIS and SIS2, none of which, I believe, should require the ECJ jurisdiction in the UK?
Absolutely confident that our friends and partners will see sense and the great mutual benefit in continuing to collaborate in exactly the way that we do.
Et tu, Brute? Yes, the Theresa May nod that says, of course, you know what you're doing, Boris. Just remember to include the simple things, you know, like applying a fishing and related standard to be implemented across the board, possible relaxation of immigration laws to allow EU workers to help pick crops, and of course, whole Northern Ireland things. Honestly, it's ridiculous. I feel embarrassed even mentioning any of this. I mean, here you are, Boris, all about the detail Johnson, right?
We are...
Well, I'm sure you'll be fine. And knowing how happy you were to hand out the bus, I'm sure you feel the same way about taking it. Did I mention I'm thinking of writing a newspaper column? So with all this and slipping in the polls, the Tories clearly felt they had to do something. So, Leader of the House and overprivileged pencil wanting to know what love is, Jacob Rees-Mogg brought the MPs back to the chambers. What could possibly go wrong? Well, this is the Business Secretary on the first day.
Of measures which have previously been consulted on. As colleagues will know, these measures were consulted on back in 2016.
Oh dear. Now, fortunately, Alok Sharma tested negative for coronavirus, but nevertheless, the problem is still relevant. Why bring people back into a possibly contaminated environment when advice from the government itself was if you can work from home, continue to do so? Why? Because this...
We're able to pledge another £4 billion, Mr. Speaker, because this government is running a strong and successful and robust economy, which he would ruin.
Looks better for Boris than this.
Because at the weekend he was backing it. Now he's doing a U-turn. Now he seems to be against the steps he's taking.
Speaking of equality, the Labour Party was created in 1900, and 120 years since its inception, it has managed during that time to not elect a leader from over 50% of the population, something that every other party has done. Conservatives, Liberal Democrats, SNP, Plaid Cymru, Green Party, the DUP, Sinn Féin, the Social Democratic and Labour Party, the Alliance Party of Northern Ireland, UKIP, even Britain First, not known, let's be fair, for its inclusive nature, has managed to elect a female leader. I presume they do this by headbutting a Rottweiler, probably, making their leadership incredibly more diverse than the Labour Party, the party that prides itself on being a broad church, although, let's be fair, that's clearly more Roman Catholic than Anglican. Just to be honest with you, I do think that Keir Starmer is doing a cracking bang-up job. But when the next appointment comes round, can I recommend, or if you want to set the right tone? So, prediction time. Every week I will try to predict a likely political outcome. What's going to happen and when it's going to happen. This week, the Prime Minister, Alexander Boris Tafafel Johnson. I wish I was making that name up. I predict he will not be Prime Minister by the end of the year. Frankly, I'm surprised he's still there now. Do you remember that oven-ready Brexit deal Boris had and everybody loved? Well, it seems that Boris isn't a big fan of what the Prime Minister, Boris, is doing, and is doing his best to weasel his way out of it. I know, right? It seems our Prime Minister is treating the deal that leads to our future trading relationship with the EU like everything else in his life, as something to be able to walk away from when things get tough. But it's clear the EU aren't going to budge on the treaty that Johnson has already agreed to. And whilst no deal may make him look tough, let's be honest, the memory of queuing 3 hours to pay £10 for toilet rolls is frankly too raw a memory to appeal to voters, as is an extension. A stuck between the truth and hard work is clearly Boris's worst nightmare. So, I expect him to leave and blame it on the EU. And, if I'm right, we have 6 months, 3 weeks and a day on the Boris Johnson countdown clock. And you thought getting their haircut would be what you had most to look forward to. Well, that's it for another week. If you are enjoying these weekly updates, then please do hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell as well. And all being well, I shall see you all next week. Thanks for watching. Take care. 6 weeks. 6 months, 3 weeks, 1 day, 36 months.